What if the double helix of DNA isn't just a scientific discovery from the 20th century, but a symbol that ancient shamans have known for millennia? The serpents in sacred myths around the world aren't just metaphors. For millennia, indigenous cultures have revered serpents as symbols of wisdom, healing, and creation. Yet modern science reveals an uncanny parallel. The serpent's coiled form mirrors the twisting ladder of DNA. In The Cosmic Serpent, anthropologist Jeremy Narby bridges these worlds, proposing that ancient rituals and visionary states unlocked insights into our genetic blueprint. What does this mean for humanity's past and its potential? Let's uncover the mystery. Jeremy Narby is a Swiss anthropologist who, in the 1980s, went to the Peruvian Amazon to study the Ashaninka people. He was focused on documenting their use of resources and land. But what he found surprised him. Shamans consistently claimed their knowledge of plants came from visions while under the influence of ayahuasca, a powerful hallucinogenic brew. Jeremy Narby first arrived in the Peruvian Amazon in 1985 as a young anthropologist conducting fieldwork for his doctorate. His goal was to document how the Ashaninka people used their land and natural resources, with the hope of countering the narrative that indigenous people lacked rational ecological practices. From the beginning, Narby was struck by how often the Ashaninka credited their knowledge of plants not to experimentation or observation, but to visions received under the influence of ayahuasca. Initially skeptical and trained to think analytically, Narby dismissed these explanations as symbolic or metaphorical. His perspective began to shift after Ruperto Gomez, a local shaman, invited him to participate in an ayahuasca ceremony. During the intense visionary experience, Narby encountered two massive, luminous snakes that seemed to impart knowledge without words, a transformative moment that haunted him long afterwards. He later recognized their shape in a biology textbook as the double helix structure of DNA, which launched the central question of his book. Could shamans be accessing biological knowledge through altered states of consciousness? Throughout his time in the forest, Narby also worked closely with Carlos Perez Schumer, an experienced tobacco and ayahuasca healer who shared stories about his life, his apprenticeship with plant medicines, and the spiritual beings called Maninkari, who communicate through visions. Carlos explained that knowledge comes directly from plants and spirits, an idea Narby had difficulty accepting, though he couldn't deny the results. Remedies prescribed by the Ashaninka often worked more effectively than Western treatments, including a tea that cured his chronic back pain after a single dose. Despite moments of misunderstanding, cultural tension, and mistrust, particularly over the fear that Narby might exploit their knowledge for profit, he gradually earned the community's respect by living simply, helping with arithmetic lessons, and openly acknowledging his outsider status. One incident that highlighted the complexity of their belief systems was when a shamanic rivalry led to suspected sorcery. Carlos claimed that another man had sent an arrow to harm him during a ceremony, causing physical illness. Narby witnessed this, but couldn't rationally explain it. Yet the community fully accepted its spiritual reality. Ultimately, Narby left with more questions than answers. The Ashaninka had generously shared their worldview, which was steeped in symbolism, myth, and direct communication with nature. Though their explanations defied Western logic, their knowledge was demonstrably effective and deeply coherent within its own paradigm. In one of his own visionary experiences, Narby saw two enormous snakes made of light. These serpents communicated knowledge directly to him. Later, as he looked at the structure of DNA in a textbook, it clicked. The snakes he saw mirrored the shape of the DNA double helix. Could it be that shamans access the molecular realm through their visions? He asked. This insight launched his journey into the intersection of biology and shamanism, questioning everything he thought he knew about science and indigenous knowledge. Nabi began seeing serpent symbolism everywhere. Amazonian shamans describe serpents as the bringers of knowledge. In Hinduism, Kundalini energy is depicted as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. The Greek caduceus, the staff with two entwined snakes, is still used today as a symbol of medicine. In Mesoamerican myth, Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent, a god of learning and culture. Throughout the world's shamanic traditions, one finds the recurring image of the cosmic serpent, not only in the Amazon and India, but also in Egypt, Sumer, Greece, and Australia. Always, it is associated with knowledge, creation, and transformation. These aren't just cultural coincidences, Nabi writes. They point to a universal archetype, one that, perhaps, is connected to the fundamental structure of life. Serpents appear again and again in contexts related to healing, wisdom, and transformation. Nabi began to wonder if this ancient symbol was not just myth, but a visionary insight into DNA's spiral structure, the double helix. DNA is the blueprint of all life on Earth. It carries the instructions that guide growth, development, and function. Its structure, discovered by Watson and Crick, is a twisting double helix, strikingly similar to the serpents seen in shamanic visions. He writes, ayahuasqueros perceive DNA-emitted photons in their visions, leading to the stimulation of DNA and, more particularly, to its emission of visible waves, which shamans perceive as hallucinations. There, I thought, is the source of knowledge. DNA, living in water and emitting photons like an aquatic dragon spitting fire. Nabi realized that when shamans drink ayahuasca, they often describe visions of spirals, ladders, and snakes glowing with light. Could it be, he wondered, that they are accessing DNA itself? Not through microscopes, but through expanded states of consciousness. He writes, the idea that DNA might be a source of knowledge and that it communicates in a language of symbols and visions was not one that science could accept, but it was one I could no longer ignore. This led him to propose a radical hypothesis, that DNA is not just a molecule, but a kind of living language capable of transmitting information to those in altered states. When scientists first decoded DNA, they found that only a tiny fraction actually codes for proteins. The rest, around 98%, was labelled junk DNA because its function was unknown. Nabi challenges this dismissive term. Nabi writes, scientists have found spread out among the non-coding parts of the text a great number of endlessly repeated sequences with no apparent meaning. They have called this apparent gibberish, junk DNA. He proposes that this junk may be more than just genetic leftovers. Perhaps it contains layers of information we don't yet understand, not just biological, but spiritual, energetic, even ancestral knowledge. Indigenous shamans believe that plants and the body contain memory and intelligence, and Nabi suggests that DNA could be the carrier of this vast, unacknowledged information. He notes, what Western science throws away as useless, indigenous cultures have revered for centuries. Modern science is dominated by left-brain thinking, rational, analytical, and linear. But indigenous wisdom is rooted in right-brain thinking, symbolic, intuitive, holistic. When someone drinks ayahuasca, the analytical mind is quieted and a new mode of perception emerges. In these states, people experience visions that are deeply symbolic but feel profoundly true. These are not hallucinations, Nabi writes. They are transmissions. This distinction between left brain and right brain ways of knowing has far-reaching implications. The left brain seeks to dissect and define reality, often reducing it to measurable components, while the right brain embraces complexity, paradox, and pattern. In the shamanic worldview, Both hemispheres must work in harmony. Ayahuasca is seen not just as a hallucinogen, but as a teaching tool that opens perception to dimensions beyond logic. Through song, symbol, and story, the right brain accesses a library of archetypal wisdom encoded in nature itself. Nabi suggests that this is how shamans retrieve precise botanical and healing knowledge, not through trial and error, but through dialogue with nature's intelligence mediated by the visionary state. DNA, the gateway to our true potential. DNA is more than a biological structure. It may be a portal to higher awareness, memory, and healing. He noticed that people undergoing deep spiritual practice or ayahuasca ceremonies often described an activation of some kind, as if something dormant inside them woke up. This awakening, he suggests, may be the reactivation of sleeping sections of DNA. Perhaps what we call junk DNA is a vast library, he writes, not accessible through microscopes or chemical assays, but through states of expanded awareness. This idea flips the scientific worldview on its head. Instead of seeing DNA as a mechanical code, Nabi sees it as a conscious entity that communicates with us through symbols and visions. This is not just spiritual poetry. It is a hypothesis rooted in indigenous knowledge, personal experience, and biological science. Nabi's work suggests that we may carry the knowledge of the universe within us, and that the key to unlocking it lies not in more advanced technology, but in deeper inner awareness. He concludes, maybe the future of science lies not in building bigger machines, but in awakening deeper minds. The Cosmic Serpent is a book that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about scientific knowledge, biology, and spirit. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. Join the Kairos Collective for more deep dives into the mysteries of consciousness and the cosmos.